Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for coming today. I am going to talk to you about my career primarily as a speech language pathologist, but also how I've been able to expand into other careers as well. So I'm going to start by sharing my story, an abbreviated version of it. And then I'll tell you what an SLP does. SLP is an acronym for speech language pathologist. It's just shorter to say where an SLP works, what a typical day looks like, the education and skills required to be successful in this career, what it looks like, the jobs for the future as well as the salary, and then how you can let your light shine in whatever position you may be in. So I actually went to college at Truman State University, which is in Missouri. I had grown up in Illinois, so it was about a 6-hour drive from home, and I started out as an accounting major. I thought it'd be cool to go to work wearing a suit, carrying a briefcase, and go to some fancy office building. Then after my first semester, once I got my report card and saw that my grades were not what I had hoped for college, I was just doing some self-reflection over winter break. So I was flipping through the course catalog and I happened upon communication disorders. I said, what is that? And I read about it and saw that a speech language pathologist or audiologist would be the career that you can get with that degree. So I decided to take a course just to learn more about it. So my Introduction to Communication Disorders course that I took really changed my mind, and I said, absolutely, this is what I want to do with my life. I get to talk for a living and help people. So I figured that was right up my alley. But then by my senior year, I was faced with another decision. I had to apply to graduate school if I wanted to work in that field, but I could either become a speech language pathologist or audiologist. Speech language pathologist 2 years, audiologist 3 years. Communication, hearing, which one do I choose? So I was fortunate enough to be a part of a program that the American Speech Language Hearing Association hosted on an annual basis for students who were underrepresented and were interested in pursuing leadership roles in the field. So they paid for us to go to the convention of over 10,000 people in Chicago for 4 days and learn more about the profession and network with not just other students, but leaders in the association. It was there that I met a woman who was over the graduate program at Penn State University. And she said, you need to apply to Penn State for grad school. And I said, I don't know if I want to go to Pennsylvania, but I took her advice and I applied. I was blessed to be awarded a full scholarship and a graduate assistantship that paid me every month to go to school. So I went to Penn State for 2 years and I graduated in, you don't need to know the year, but I graduated with my master's degree set for a career in speech language pathologist. After graduating, I worked with kids, primarily preschool through 12th grade, and then I realized as I was doing that for a few years that my commute was a little longer than I would have liked because I was still in Pennsylvania. Has anyone ever been to State College or Central PA? It's a little rural. There's not much there. Things are very spread out and there are mountains. So I was on my way to work one day and I was literally stuck at the bottom of a mountain in my Pontiac Grand Am, which is 4 cylinders, and it had snowed, so I didn't have enough power to get up the mountain to get to work. So I called in and said, sorry, I can't come to work today. And I had to make a decision. I traded in my car for an SUV. I got a Jeep. And I said, you know what? I need to look for another job because this commute is not working out. So a colleague told me about a company that was looking for a speech language pathologist part-time to work from home. And I said, I'm full-time, I'm salaried, I know exactly how much I'm making, and I just bought a house. Not sure I can accept a part-time position right now, but it sounds kind of intriguing, so let me apply. So I left my stable full-time job to work from home part-time, and I just had to commute to my office across the hall in my slippers and pajama pants. So I was working as a speech language pathologist just for a few months when a full-time opportunity became available with my employer. So I had extreme faith to believe that God would provide for me for those few months that I wasn't full-time anymore because my salary had dropped significantly. But after working a few years, I started to get the desire to do a little bit more. like, yeah, working with kids online is fine, but I want to do something else. So I asked my supervisor if there was an opportunity to become a manager. And she said, well, not really, I'm the only manager. So I was persistent, I kept asking, and as we hired more employees, the department grew. There were SLPs working across the country, all from home. One day I asked her, what about this whole management thing? And she said, you know what? Let's talk about it. I think we can open a position for you, but you have to write the job description. So I wrote the job description for a position that hadn't existed before that I would then work in. So 50% was management, and then the other 50% was still working with the kids. And then after 2 more promotions, I was just a manager, not working with the students anymore. And I realized that I wanted to learn more about the business side of the business. And so I went back to school. I already had 1 master's, and I said, hey, why not get a second? So I went to Fairleigh Dickinson for their Saturday MBA program while I was working. During the week, work full time. Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I went to Madison, New Jersey for my MBA program. Halfway through the program, we had our first daughter, who's now a kindergartner here, and I was faced with a decision. I don't want to go back to work full time for someone else. So I decided to start my own business. And that's when I started online speech services. So I provide speech therapy and communication coaching to children and adults, and I work with clients all over the world from home. I also really enjoy teaching. It's just something I've always been kind of drawn to without the full-time commitment of being a classroom teacher. So when I left Fairleigh Dickinson after I graduated, I asked one of my previous professors if they could get me in touch with the department chair so I could potentially work there and teach. So I taught at Fairleigh Dickinson for a couple years through the pandemic, from in-person to online. And then another previous professor said, hey, Adrienne, I left Fairleigh Dickinson and I went to Montclair. We need an adjunct in entrepreneurship. Do you want to come over? So I left Fairleigh Dickinson and started teaching at Montclair, and that's where I am now. I teach evening classes in management and entrepreneurship. So that's my story, and that's what I do today. I also wanted to show you, before I forget, I co-authored a book called the SLP Entrepreneur in 2022, and it's really a culmination of all the experiences that I've had, because my co-author, colleague, friend, and I both had similar paths. We were speech language pathologists working for someone else, and somehow found ourselves starting our own businesses, but not just the conventional in-person clinic that a lot of people started for private practice. I also create online courses and online materials and sell to other speech language pathologists who are working online. So that's another part of what I do as an entrepreneur. And then the educator role in me, I work in the classroom traditionally, but I also work with students one-on-one, kind of like a life coach, but for academics. So an academic success coach to help them set goals and be successful. All right, so that's what I do. But as a speech language pathologist, there are so many opportunities for what you could do. And I just have a very small percentage of all of the experiences that you might have. You can work in a number of settings, working with kids literally from birth, from the time they're born in the hospital, to adults who are in their hundreds if you want. So all of these words are related to the job, to the field of speech pathology. Communication, language, and speech are at the core, but there's so much more. You can work with people who need to learn how to eat again. If you've ever had a family member or know of someone who's had a stroke and they have to get on those thin liquids or those the thick foods that are kind of chunky and not very flavorful, speech language pathologists are the ones who help them develop those plans, and they work in hospitals and nursing homes. So there are a lot of different things that you can do. A lot of people also work with those who have had either just a raspy voice from being a coach or talking as a teacher all day and they can barely talk, to those who might have nodules on their vocal cords and need surgery and need to learn how to use their voice more efficiently. So there are a number of possibilities within the field. This is an example.
Here we go. I have some surprise eggs. Yeah, we're going to pick an egg. Do you want the yellow egg or the green egg? Which egg?
Yellow.
All right. You say, I want yellow.
I want yellow.
Good. Can you say,
that's just an example of me working online with a child. I think she was 4 at the time, but just to show you, if you're really interested in the field, you can really do anything and have a lot of fun doing it if it's something that you're interested in and passionate about. So what is speech and what is language? Speech refers to the way we produce sounds and words. So things like articulation, being able to move your teeth and your tongue and your lips all together at the right time to produce the right sounds. And also even the voice that I mentioned earlier. If you have someone who doesn't use their voice well and is always getting hoarse, trying to figure out how to help them use their voice more efficiently so they can speak loud enough. Working with people who stutter, that's something that speech language pathologists do as well. And individuals who are older adults who may have had a stroke, or like my father had a traumatic brain injury in 2004. He worked with a speech language pathologist to help him speak again and to learn to eat again, to eat solid foods. So those are all things related to the speech part of speech language pathology. Language is what we're saying or what we're hearing or reading or understanding. So I'm talking to you and you're understanding me. So you're using receptive language and I'm speaking, so I'm using expressive language. There are a number of ways to communicate that aren't spoken, right? You have a book, so how do you get the information from the book? Read it, right? And you have an essay due on Monday, so how do you finish your essay?
Writing it.
You write it, right? So all of these are ways to communicate using language. All right, so let's talk about where SLPs work, what kinds of settings. Schools are the most popular settings because children have a higher incidence of communication disorders than adults. If you work in private practice, that's just like a doctor would have an office. You can have an office as a speech language pathologist. I've just chosen to work from home, but other people do have medical offices that their clients or patients come into. Hospitals, you can work going from room to actually see the patients, or you might work in outpatient, so the clients might just come in for your session and then leave. They're not actually administered to the hospital. And then nursing facilities. These are only really the top 4 popular settings that speech language pathologists can work in. If you're doing services online, it may be for any of these settings. You can also work in home health, so going into the homes to work with children or to work with adults. There are some people who choose to not just have one job. A lot of school-based speech language pathologists will work in the schools during the school year, but then in the summer, they'll work in hospitals or nursing facilities. So it's very flexible. You don't have to be tied down to one setting or one job. What does a typical day look like? If you're working in schools, you have a school schedule. So when school starts, you start working. When school ends, you're done working. A lot of people may have paperwork and things like that to do, but you spend about 70% of your time working directly with the kids, and then the rest of it may be meetings, documentation, planning for the next day, lunch duty, bus duty, all of those things that come along with working in a school. For private practice, I just put the hours of 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., but you may actually work later than that. I've worked with clients in other countries sometimes until 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. because it's a different time where they are. So you can work with clients anytime that they're available and you're available for private practice, but you're really spending about 90% of your time working directly with them, and there's little documentation that you have to complete compared to if you're in a school. So what's needed for success? You start with your bachelor's degree. How long does that take? 4 years. And then you get a master's degree. How many does that take? How many years? 2. So 4 plus 2, how many years are we at? 6. And then you work for a year, you're getting paid, but you have a supervisor just to make sure that you're very confident and competent enough and prepared to then take the national exams to be certified. So we're at 6 and we add 1 more year. How many is that?
7.
So 7 years from start to finish to become a licensed speech language pathologist. Sounds great, right?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, and then what kind of skills? You need to be a good communicator, actually like people because you'll be working with people, and be organized. A speech language pathologist working in schools may have anywhere from 50 to 100 kids on their caseload. So you have to know what they're working on, their goals, have all of their records and things like that organized. And be flexible. Things don't always go as planned. You may have a young toddler that you're working with who decides they just want to run around the room for 30 minutes, or throw the toys that you're trying to get them to play with, or pour out the bubbles that you are trying to blow. And you have to just be adaptable and flexible to that. Or maybe you have an older adult that you're working with and just isn't having a good day. They just have low energy, and you're trying to figure out how to work with their caregivers, maybe their child, in order to help them be adaptable and able to function in their environment at home. So those are some of the skills that are necessary for success. So all of these years of education and training, how is it going to pay off? There were 171,000 jobs for speech language pathologists in 2022, and a 19% projected job growth over a 10-year period. Most jobs that are about 5%. So that's almost quadruple other jobs in other industries. Speech language pathology in the healthcare setting is ranked the number 3 job in healthcare. And that's working in hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, all of that. Speech language pathology is number 3, and that's this year. And overall, for all industries and all jobs, it's ranked number 10. And I had never heard about this field until I was a freshman in college. And I wish I had learned about it sooner, but I'm still here today. So what's the average salary? How much can you actually make when you say it's a great job? So New Jersey is ranked number 5 as a top paying state for speech language pathologists, with an average salary of $102,000 per year. Nationwide, the salary average is about $84,000. So New Jersey is definitely higher than that. And then if you're looking at the different settings, it depends on what setting you're in. Working in nursing facilities, you're going to make the most. Working in schools, the salary is the lowest, but that's just because schools are only open for 10 years of them, or 10 months of the year. So if you wanted to make more, then you need to find another job for those times that the schools are not open. John 13:35 says, "By this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." So in whatever job you choose, whatever career or path you take, let your light shine and show love to other people in everything you do. And that's how people will know that you're Christians, and that maybe will lead them to God as well. Who loves a pop quiz? All right, nobody. Let's do it. We're going to work together. You can ask your neighbor for help for this one. We are going to just see 4 quick things. See if you remember. So what's the New Jersey average salary ranking? 19, 3, 5, or 10?
5.
All right, we're not sure, 5 or 13. Okay, let's say the projected job growth through 2032. Which one was that? 19. Overall?
3.
Overall best jobs?
10.
10, and then healthcare job rankings.
3.
Okay, do we need to change anything?
No, we don't.
Okay, we think that's it? All right, let's submit. Awesome, you got it. So I have a little prize for you all. Take one and pass it around, please, for being such great listeners and great participants today. And I just want to leave you with a couple quick tips. Follow your passion, whatever that is. You may not know it yet, but just try to discover what you're interested in and what your natural gifts are. I know it was said earlier, but network, network, network. Talk to people, your parents, their friends, your aunts, your uncles, whoever, and really try to make some connections, even with your teachers. Try to get a mentor, someone who will help give you advice and guide you along the way, and also find opportunities to job shadow. All right, and then I have my references here, but if you ever have questions, I put my business card in there just so you have my email address. You can always reach out to me anytime. I'd be happy to help you. And even if it's just sending you more information. And this QR code will actually take you to the American Speech Language Hearing Association website that has more information about how to get started in a career in speech language pathology. Thank you very much.